reproductive rights, and her name is Missy McGinnis, and she is the Director of Distributed Organizing for Red, White, and Blue. Missy.
Hi everybody, can you hear me? So my name is Missy McGinnis, and I've lived in Pike for 5.5 years with my husband Matt, back there filming me, and my 2 sons. But as I entered this room tonight, I think I need to get out a little more because I only know maybe a handful of you. So hopefully I'll meet all of you and get to talk to you this evening. I also, as Heidi said, I work for the organization, the nonprofit organization, Red, Wine, and Blue. And what we do as an organization is we mobilize suburban women to give them all the tools they need to better organize in their local communities. And so Red, Wine, and Blue was very involved in the signature gathering effort earlier this year to put issue 1 on the ballot in Ohio. As an organization, we gathered more than 50,000 signatures statewide, and I personally gathered more than 700 signatures. So I've spent countless hours this year advocating and working on this issue, and so I'm really happy to be here tonight to share why it's so important and critical that issue 1 gets passed. And so for 50 years, as we all know, Roe versus Wade was the law of the land. We thought our rights were protected. About 1.5 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, and it took many of us by surprise, and it immediately threatened reproductive rights and health care nationwide. In Ohio, you all may know this, but immediately, as soon as Roe versus Wade was overturned, Ohio immediately put in place a 6-week ban on abortion, with no exceptions for rape, incest, or the health or life of the pregnant person. So a 6-week ban on abortion really is essentially a complete and total ban on abortion because most people don't know they're actually pregnant until they're after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And we've now seen the devastation that this ban has had in Ohio and the politicians behind it. We all remember the heartbreaking story of the 10-year-old rape victim who had to leave the state to access abortion care. Her heartbreaking story made national news. Fortunately, a few months after the 6-week ban was put in place, a court in Hamilton County in Cincinnati put an injunction on that 6-week ban. So an injunction is like a stay or a pause on that law until courts can evaluate it. So since then, so for about the past year, abortion has been legal in Ohio for up to 22 weeks of pregnancy. But make no mistake, that this is a temporary injunction and there are already challenges to this injunction. So if issue 1 is not passed, it is very likely in the next few months, if not sooner, the Ohio Supreme Court will reverse the injunction and the 6-week ban would be the law in Ohio. So this is why it is critical that we all vote yes on issue 1, on or before November 7th. So what does issue 1 do exactly? So it will enshrine reproductive rights into the Ohio Constitution, and it will bring us back the protections we had under Roe versus Wade. Specifically, this constitutional amendment will protect access to safe abortion care up until fetal viability, as determined by the treating physician, not the government. And also, it will protect miscarriage management, infertility treatment, and birth control, all of which are at risk in Ohio, as scary as that sounds. Abortion after fetal viability will only be permitted in the very rare cases when the life or the health of the pregnant person is at risk. So there is a lot of disinformation being shared about issue 1. What you need to know is this. This amendment only covers reproductive health care and nothing else. Don't believe what you are hearing from the opposition. What the opponents of issue 1 know is that they cannot win on the reproductive rights issue alone. Supporting the protection of reproductive rights is very popular across the country and in Ohio. Vast majority, regardless of your political party, believes that reproductive rights should be protected. So that's why you're seeing a lot of disinformation and they're expecting that you to fall for it. Don't fall for it. Know the facts. So voting yes for issue 1 will remove politicians from personal private decisions and stops the government from dictating what's best for our families. This issue strengthens parental rights by placing reproductive decisions firmly in the hands of Ohio families. Now, I'm a parent myself, and I don't think that government should be the one to dictate what's right for my family. I should, so should my husband. I also want to note that in addition to threatening women's health care, Ohio's extreme stance on abortion is affecting the business and medical communities. Applications to residency programs in our hospitals are down, and not just for OBGYN programs, for all programs, because doctors don't want to practice in a state that doesn't provide access to reproductive health. Also, businesses are having a lot of trouble recruiting people, young women and men, because they don't want to come to Ohio because of our extreme stance. So the stakes couldn't be higher. If we don't act this November, extremist politicians will have the ability to completely ban and even criminalize abortion with no exception for rape or incest. So please vote yes on issue 1 to ensure that your friends and your family, everybody you know, get that vote.
Anyone have any questions for Missy? Over here.
Missy, does this amendment have anything to do with parental rights?
So as I mentioned, there is a lot of disinformation swirling around out there because the opponents to issue 1 know that they cannot win on reproductive rights alone. And so this amendment would not change Ohio's existing law on parental consent. So here's what we know. I actually wrote it down so I could be ready for a question just like this. This amendment protects both women and girls, but it doesn't say that they have the same rights. In fact, there are a lot of state and federal laws that limit the rights of minors, like parental consent, despite constitutional protections. So guns are a good example. You know, we don't let 12-year-olds buy guns, even though our Constitution doesn't distinguish between minors and adults.
Answer the question.
Yeah, I want to add, you know, courts have upheld Ohio's parental consent law while Roe versus Wade was still in place. And so when it was overturned, there's no reason to think that anything is going to change in parental rights.
Okay. Any other questions?
I understand that there are laws right now that protect parental rights, but an amendment to the Constitution trumps all of that. If you get into a litigation, what happens with the amendment, as I understand, the amendment trumps parental rights now, so they all go away, and this amendment takes those rights away. Comment, please?
I'm just going to repeat what I said before. What you're hearing about parental rights, you can read the amendment. Here's the full text of it. It's very short. It's actually shorter than what is going to be on the ballot. So this is what is going to go in the Constitution. If you vote yes, there is nothing about parental rights. The parental rights in Ohio are very secure. And in fact, in Michigan, which went through all of this a year ago, and there was a lot of complaint and concern about parental rights, and what happened was, you know, Michigan's a lot different than Ohio because they have a full Democratic legislature and executive branch, and there have been no changes to parental rights. It's going to be the same.
Hi, can you tell us about the language on the ballot and how it differs from the amendment?
Sure. Well, there is a ballot board in Ohio that they determine how language gets onto the ballot. What they try to do is they try to abbreviate and kind of condense the language that would be going, in a constitutional amendment. But what they've actually done is the language on the ballot is actually longer than the actual Constitution amendment. Again, because they want to pull the wool over your eyes. They're going to use some inflammatory terms. I have a lot of these cards at my table back there, and I'm happy to share anything with them. This is the exact language that will go in the amendment. And it only has to do with reproductive rights. Every individual has the right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions. And then there's a little bit more, but yeah, it has nothing to do with anything that you're hearing from the opposition.
And remember, all speakers that are still here, when we conclude, you can go up to them and speak to them one-on-one if you want to delve further and get clarity. Thank you.
Thank you.